Greetings to the graduating class of 2020, and to your family and to your friends. My name is Sue Zemka, and I'm the chairperson of the English department here at CU Boulder. We know very well that this graduation ceremony on this remote platform is probably not what you wanted and not what you had in mind, and that some, maybe many of you, were looking forward to the traditional commencement ceremony that would be outdoors on a spring day. We do want you to know that next spring you are invited to return to campus and participate in an outdoor ceremony. This year we're doing our best to try and give you the commemoration that you deserve on your graduation day. This video has been put together by our staff at the English department with a lot of thought and input from the faculty and from the college. I want to assure you that your graduation means a lot to us, and that it pains us as well that we cannot be with you in person today to congratulate you and to see the smiles on your faces as you celebrate your achievement. This last semester of your undergraduate years was also probably not what you had in mind, and you've been challenged more than you ever expected you would be. You've probably been challenged more in the events of the last few months under the pandemic than you have been in your usual college classes. I know and believe that you have risen to the occasion of this challenge and have maybe learned more from this than you have from the degrees that you earned today. I sincerely hope so. And I hope that what you've learned echoes what I have learned, which is the importance of supporting each other, the importance of being kind to each other, and the realization, undeniable to us now, that we are all very, very connected. I hope you can take this lesson forward with some joy as we recover from this pandemic and try to put these lessons into practice. So now we're going to begin the proper ceremony of your commemoration, such as we have created it for this online format. Again, congratulations to you and to your families, and a deep appreciation for the time that you've spent with us here at CU Boulder. Thank you.
Hi, fellow graduates. My name is Lena Osmundson, and I am from Thornton, Colorado, which is only about half an hour away from CU, so Boulder has always been very close to home, both physically and emotionally. But I've actually only been back in Colorado for a couple of months, as I spent the majority of 2019 and the beginning of 2020 traveling all over the world. I traveled in Southeast Asia for teaching in the summer. I studied abroad in Great Britain in the fall, and I lived in Croatia in the spring. This privilege of being able to travel and of having opportunities to explore is not lost on me in this difficult time. And it's because of this travel that I recognize why English matters during global challenges, and particularly in this time of COVID-19, which is the topic of my speech today. I'd first like to talk about an enlightening moment during my travels. In the fall semester, I spent a few months studying abroad in Edinburgh, Scotland. During one weekend, I ventured to the far west of the country to a beautiful little fishing town called Oban. From there, I took several very choppy and very nauseating ferry rides to a small island called the Isle of Iona. On the entire island, there were probably 15 residences in small buildings and one large mountain, although by Colorado standards, I'd probably call it more of a hill. I spent a couple of hours scrambling to the summit, where, to my surprise, I discovered a massive cairn, otherwise known as a man-made pile of rocks, a few inches taller than me. And right in the center of the rock pile was a deep, narrow hollow. I reached inside and found a smooth stone about the size of my palm, and when I looked at it, I read the words, "Something inside so strong," painted on the rock in blue, with the symbolic diagonal white cross of the Scottish flag painted in the center. The reason I want to share this moment is because as I held the stone, it dawned on me that somehow Some time ago, some stranger from some country in the world had painted this rock and placed it in the cairn for hundreds, maybe even thousands of visitors to discover, read, and internalize. But I realized then that it wasn't just the 4 words that were significant. It was also everything this person had chosen not to write on the stone that was significant too. Because this person chose a message of strength and hope. This rock could have been painted with any number of words in any order, but the creator decided on these specific words of comfort and inspiration for future readers. I was quite emotional as I read the stone, standing by myself on top of this mountain in what felt like the middle of the ocean with no one in sight, because I honestly didn't feel alone. I felt comforted by the idea that I was standing where at least one other person had stood to place this stone. And so I put back the stone in the hollow, as perhaps many had done before me, wondering who else would read the words and hold the same object and ponder about the many people before them who had happened upon this place. It was this stone that helped me realize that because of those 4 words, something inside so strong, because of English in all its facets, such as the language, literature, reading, writing, communicating, we all have the ability to travel, explore, discover, and internalize lessons from all over the world, from all time periods of the world, at any point in our lives. I think I didn't realize the true value and power of English before my travels because I honestly took it for granted. But traveling and living in remote areas where the language of English wasn't spoken, such as in Thailand and Croatia, really made me appreciate what English means for me. English and the study of English matters because it is not merely a subject or a language. English is an immensely formidable tool of communication that we see utilized in so many ways as the world responds to this pandemic. When I first wrote this speech and considered English as a tool of communication, I found myself using the words positive and negative to encompass the types of communication that English offers. But it was in writing these contrary words that I realized my own error in suggesting that English limits us to either partake in good messages or bad messages. I was biased, thinking that because of the stone I had found in the quote, "something inside so strong," that I was viewing English as only meaningful if it was a positive means of communication. Instead, after researching the quote and attempting to delve into what it really means, I now see that English is a tool because it provides what I will call a balance of contrary forces. When I researched the quote, "something inside so strong," the overwhelming results pointed to a song title. I'm not sure if this is what the quote on the stone intended to allude to, but immediately I felt a sense of understanding as I researched the song, as I would encourage all of you to research. "Something Inside So Strong" is a 1987 single written and recorded by Labi Siffre, who was a British singer, songwriter, musician, and poet, and still is today. The song has been seen plenty of wonderful covers and has won numerous awards, and I was surprised by how much of an influence this song has had over many musicians' careers. In interviews, Labi Siffre discussed how the lyrics, again suggesting the influence of English as language in literature, were influenced by his difficult upbringing as a gay Black man, where he experienced prejudice, homophobia, and racism. His struggles occurred during a period of political and sociological unrest in the 60s and 70s, unrest that we still see and face today. Furthermore, we see how this current pandemic has also ignited political and sociological unrest. The lyrics and the phrase, "something inside so strong," encompass the idea that strength comes from within when we overcome difficulties in our lives. And I realized that though this stone may have been a message of positivity, those words, as expressed in the song, were born out of harsh challenges. That is when I understood the true power of English and the study of English, again, as a balance of contrary forces. Today, we see English in uplifting stories that encourage hope, and we may also see it in somber articles that deliver reality. We see English in signs thanking healthcare and essential workers, and we see it in protests and rallies demanding a return back to where we once were. We see English in technology that aids in eliminating the spread of the virus. And we see it in studies remarking upon the vast work that still needs to be done in preventing future pandemics. We see English in legislation advocating for healthcare and civil liberties. And we see it in debates and arguments in verbal and written altercations. In almost everything we do, we see English. And at the core of English, we see communication. Those precise 4 words, something inside so strong, painted on that stone, illustrate the ability of English as a wonderfully positive means of communication across both time and space. But to recognize the true power and value of the study of English and why it matters during the time of COVID-19, we need to understand that English is a means of all types of communication, a balance of contrary forces, and that we each have a choice in how we decide to engage with those messages. I also want to acknowledge that, frankly, this is just a really hard time. It's great to find the light and hope amidst the somber news stories, as I hope this speech can help deliver. But it's also okay to realize the difficulties of these times and to grieve for our futures that may be altered. Like English, there is a balance with how we engage with the present world today. Because with COVID-19 doesn't just come new rules, there comes a completely new way of life. We are bombarded with news that threatens our livelihoods, our futures, our friends, and our families. But I challenge you to think critically, as the study of English often demands, of what we can do with the current information in the world. English allows us to internalize and ponder conflicting messages, whether hopeful or sad or infuriating or inspiring. It also allows us to deliver those same messages to others, and that is a very powerful responsibility. English allows us to delve into all of the complexities of the present time and to consider all perspectives of the issues in the world today. English, again, is a tool, and with the right usage, we can use that tool to our advantage and to aid our well-being and the well-being of others. I want to give all of my fellow graduates in the English department today not only a huge congratulations, but also a big virtual embrace, in the knowledge that even in uncertainty, you are graduating today and you have achieved something incredible. I'm sure it definitely has not been easy to face so many transitions, both at the university and in your personal lives. But despite all of the changes and the trials, we're all here today to celebrate a victory and a milestone in our lives that is both meaningful and valued. I want to celebrate all of our accomplishments that have led us to this point, as well as all the challenges we have overcome. I want to celebrate how we have all experienced a balance of contrary forces to get here today, and we will continue to experience this balance as we interact with the present world. Congratulations to all of my fellow graduates in completing your English degree. You are resilient and you are worthy, because truthfully, we are all something inside so strong.
Congrats, grads! Graduating class of 2020. I'm Kayla Bowman, and on behalf of the English department at the University of Colorado Boulder, I and my co-valedictorian, Lena Osmondson, extend our congratulations to each and every one of you. We made it! In our time at CU, we have written countless papers, read so many books, and studied Foucault until our eyes fell out. So, what have we gained from all our time, effort, and sleepless nights? We, as English majors, have developed essential skills specific only to the study of literature, but that are applicable in all walks of life. We have been doubted at times. We've all been asked, English, what are you going to do with that? But we, English majors, know how to write, read, and think critically. Our English degrees represent our ability to communicate effectively, express our thoughts and ideas clearly, and to argue for what we know is right. We have found a community in each other, one that will spread far and wide into almost every field of work out there. It may be cliche to say this, but I think it's true. Today marks the first day of the rest of our lives. I wish I could be telling you all this in person, and I'm deeply saddened that we can't celebrate this moment together. But I am grateful that I've been given the opportunity to speak about something that means so much to us all. Lena and I were asked to talk about the value of English in the time of COVID-19. I think we can all agree that the study of literature is important always. But I want to start by talking about why it's valuable to me. I'll admit it, I'm a bookworm. I've spent most of my life with my nose in a book, and I chose the English major because I knew I loved stories. See, when you break literature down to its bones, you start to realize that it's actually a collection of stories arranged just right. Some of my earliest memories are of reading by flashlight under my bed covers, finding it too hard not to turn the next page. Stories captivated me. They still do. To me, stories are like glue. They're sticky. They bind people to their words and to one another. They form bonds that last a lifetime. Studying literature in college reminded me of how important stories are, not just to me, but to the world. Stories hold value to all of us for countless reasons. Our stories mean something special to us, something intangible but invaluable. If they didn't, we wouldn't still be telling them. It would be impossible for me to list all of the things that they do for us, but if you'll allow me, I'd like to name a few. Stories teach. Children learn from stories because they teach us what we need to know. Stories teach us about society and about ourselves, about how the world works and how it doesn't. Stories teach us to broaden our perspectives and horizons and to look beyond our here and now. Like mirrors, they reflect our flaws back onto us, and they show us how we can change. They are roadmaps. They lead us by example of what we should do and what we should not. They teach us right from wrong, what is good and bad, and that there is gray in between. When we are faced with adversity and uncertainty, stories have the potential to guide us forward. They teach us to fight for those who need it most, how to cope with pain, anger, loss, and sadness, but also how to love and laugh, and how to live too, fully and freely. Stories teach us to be human. They remind us to be compassionate, understanding, and forgiving, to put aside our differences, and to make sacrifices for the greater good of us all. Stories entertain. They make us laugh and cry. They make us care about people that don't exist and about what will happen to them next. They tell us about things that aren't real, but that feel real, like magic, monsters, and mysteries, distant worlds and ancient bygones, and dystopian futures. We get excited when we're deep in a story. Stories keep us on the edges of our seats in anticipation of the next plot twist, chapter, or episode. If you've ever heard of book hangovers, you know that stories can have a profound impact on us. We get a little sad when we get to the end. There's a reason why people ask you what book you would bring if you were stranded on an island. Stories make us happy, and they keep our minds off the things we would rather not think about, if just for a moment. Stories support. They offer guidance when we are lost. They pick us up when we're down. They tell us that whatever we've been through in life, no matter how horrible, there are others who have gone through the same. Stories offer safe spaces and communities where we can talk to each other about our experiences and about how to cope with our traumas. They make us feel like we are part of something bigger than ourselves. They make us feel welcomed and loved. We trust them, and we trust the people who tell them, because we know what they had to sacrifice to share that piece of themselves with the world. Stories inspire. Stories make us be better, do better, and think better for a brighter future. Stories inspire us to dream, imagine, and escape, just briefly, to paradise. They force us to look closely at our circumstances and think about how we can improve them. They remind us that we are the masters of our fate, and we can do anything we set our minds to. We are responsible for enacting the change we want to see in the world while we are on it, and stories inspire us to make it happen. Most importantly, stories endure. Stories are as old as time. People have been telling stories to each other all around the globe for eons. They are eternal, just as certain as death and taxes. They stay with us through our lives and are passed down like treasured heirlooms, generation after generation. Literature is among the greatest works of art. It exists beyond pen and paper, even beyond medium. It crosses borders, barriers, and languages. And the stories that comprise literature are told, sung, heard, read, watched, and shared. They are cherished in all cultures, and they become part of our identities, part of what makes us who we are. Stories offer us immortality. They are the fountain of youth. They are what we leave behind when we depart. The COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented, historic event that is changing our lives faster than we can keep up with. It has brought sickness, death, and social distancing. It has devastated nations, economies, and local communities. As of right now, we have lost over 200,000 lives to this virus, and that number continues to climb every day. Things will not go back to normal. Our lives will forever be affected by what we decide to do right now and by how we adapt to this crisis. But despite the trials we face today, we will overcome them in triumph tomorrow. We, as one people, are in this together. C.S. Lewis, the author of one of the most beloved stories of our lifetimes, once said, "We read to know we are not alone." And in this lonely time, even as we remain 6 feet apart, it is of the utmost importance that we remember what brings us together, our stories. Stories show us that even at a distance, we can be close. Stories are the glue that binds the pages of our lives to one another. We must always remember that stories are what hold us together when we start to drift apart. So pick up that book that's been gathering dust on your bookshelf. Watch that show you've been meaning to get around to but just never found the time for. Put on your favorite movie and remember why you love it so much. Appreciate the work that went into telling those stories and the artists who crafted them. And share how you feel about your favorite stories with the people close to you, even if you can't be close to them for a little while longer. And graduates, be sure to celebrate this momentous achievement. In spite of all this confusion, take the time to be happy you made it this far. Bring your stories with you wherever you go next. Let them stick to you like glue. And finally, remember your life is a story, and this is just the first chapter. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Carr. I'm the Director of Graduate Studies here at the English Department, and I'm going to read a little speech that I've written for the graduate students. So forgive me from the start because I'm going to keep looking down at this piece of paper instead of directly at you all. So hello, graduating graduate students. We today are enormously proud of you. We want to celebrate you as best we can given these circumstances. I want to make a shout out to Kat for creating this digital online continuation ceremony. So I'll begin by just saying that these 3 years of being the Director of Graduate Studies here at CU Boulder have been without a doubt the best 3 years of my time here at CU. I have found such pleasure in working with all of you students, and it has been an enormous honor to be able to do what I can to try to make your lives here a little bit better. It's been work, but it has never been a burden, and that's because of how really wonderful all of you are and how much joy it brings me to support you whenever I can and to support your brilliant and important work. So thank you for these times that these 3 years have brought. And so here we are. As I said, we are enormously proud of you. And we are also worried with you and for you as you are graduating into this economic crisis and into this health crisis. I don't know what you are feeling today. I don't know whether you are mourning or whether you are worried in particular for somebody that you love or for yourself. And I don't know if you are broke or if somebody that you love is facing that. And I don't know what job you're going to have next year, what next year will look like for you or for any of us. But I do know some things, and so I'll say what I do know. I do know that the world that we live in is formed in large part by language. The language that is spoken into a computer or written into a notebook or typed into a term paper or a dissertation or spoken at the president's podium or written into Twitter or spoken across a dinner table, all of this language really matters. Language is world making. And we here together have been making our world. And we are struggling all the time, and especially perhaps right now, to make a world that is livable for ourselves and our loved ones, and for children that are here and children that are coming. And we're struggling to do this against forces that we often don't understand. And yet, every one of us, every one of you, does know what is right. You do know what a world worth living in feels like. And you know this because you find it every single day in moments together, but also in moments alone. And because you know what health feels like and what caring feels like and what love or aliveness and joy feel like, you can reach for these things even when things seem bleak, even when you're stuck alone in an apartment, even when you don't know how you will make a living. You know what a caring society would feel like because you create that every single day in small ways or in big ways. And even more, you especially as researchers and writers and readers know how to imagine and describe a better world. And you know how to speak against the anger and shame and confusion and greed that have been in our way. And these are things you know not just because you are graduating with a master's or a PhD or an MFA from CU Boulder. These are things you know because you're human. But what your work here has done for you, I believe, is to focus that innate knowledge even more precisely. You have a deep sense of justice, and this is informed by having listened to voices in texts from throughout history. And you have a deep sense of what it means to study, which is going to be so important for all of us. And so you know how to find in texts that which will carry us forward and that which will help you in particular through difficult times. You know how to listen, and you know how to create. And if this pandemic is a teacher, what it teaches us is that we need new ideas and new models for care, new models for justice, and new models for communal living, and new structures for the distribution of resources. And you, in particular, know how to respond to these needs with incredible skill and imagination. We need your voice and your writing and your thinking and your world making. And others need you who are not yet born. So take your language forward, that ease that you have with it, and that willingness that you have to struggle with it, and that care that you bring to it as a passion, as a commitment. I don't know what job it's going to bring you right now, or what reward, but I do know that it will sustain you as it has enriched you these 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 years that you've been with us. We were your teachers out of sheer luck and happenstance, but it was our honor. It was what we most wanted to do, and we know that you being with us was a gift. So we thank you for that. We see you for what you are, which is brilliant and gifted, and we care about you as you go forward. So stay in touch, and thank you for all that you have brought to us here, and for all that you will bring to the future that needs your passion and your skill and your love so acutely. Congratulations.
Hello, creative writing graduates of spring 2020. So, here I am, recording this at home in my tiny study, instead of addressing all of you in the Mary Ripon Theater. And I assume you are at home as well, in whatever space you've secured for yourself to work and to write. Which some people would say is not a bad place for a writer to be. Recently, a writer friend, stuck in quarantine with people that she normally wouldn't be keeping house with, had a kvetching housemate turn to her and say, "You don't mind this at all, do you? It's just more time to hole up and work on your novel." And that's the comforting myth, isn't it? The myth that's been perpetuated by memes over the past month about how Shakespeare wrote King Lear, as well as came up with Macbeth and Antony and Cleopatra in plague lockdown, while Proust, going into self-imposed isolation, supposedly wrote much of remembrance of things past in his cork-lined room. But the truth is that both of these writers were quite social. According to literary historians, Shakespeare worked intimately with actors, his most trusted collaborators, and may have even written his plays in the theater building. And Proust spent a good part of the years that preceded his self-sequestrament socializing, cultivating interesting friends and patrons, attending salons, and hanging out at brothels. That is, doing the stuff he wrote about. In Finnegan's Wake, James Joyce wrote obliquely, but also quite expressively, about the myth of the writers scribbling away in their private little space. The space where Shem the penman writes is called the haunted ink bottle. That is, it's a space where you're never truly alone, whether you want to be or not. Shem's ink bottle, in fact, has quote-unquote sound-conducting walls through which he can eavesdrop on other people's speech, plagiarizing everyone from Shakespeare to, quote, that girl over there and that man in the corner, unquote. And Joyce himself was always surrounded by family. Even after he went into self-exile from Ireland, he brought over family, brothers, sisters, nieces. In addition to his wife and 2 kids, everybody crammed into the rundown flats that were all he could afford on his English teacher's salary. So the point is that we all very much live and write in larger communities of family, friends, students, professors, colleagues, and other writers. And one of the most important things that commencement provides, besides a milestone acknowledgement of your academic and writerly achievements, is a chance to share them with the communities in which and through which these achievements occur. I'm sad not to be speaking directly to you all, and also the members of your communities who would be here to share in your accomplishments if this were the end of a normal academic year. But I'm no less proud and awed by what you've accomplished, particularly our MFA graduates. And I'm going to include here not just the names of the spring 2020 graduates, but also the summer and fall 2019 who were not acknowledged publicly. They are Riley Bartlett, Chris Becker, Garrett Biggs, Heather Cohen, Rachel Correa, Nilu Karimi, Bree Pye, Michael Soames, Stephen Ruzick, Reed Underwood, and Fong Vong. The 11 of you have, while taking a full load of graduate-level workshops in poetry and fiction writing, literature seminars, language courses and electives, working part-time to full-time teaching, or engaging in other forms of employment, both on campus and off, participating actively in our local literary community, also both on campus and off, and helping to put out both Subito Books and Timber Magazine, have also managed to produce 70 to 200-page literary works of publishable or near publishable quality. You're already amazing, and now that you've got all this time to write, well, who knows? And by the way, even toward the end of his life, Proust still snuck out sometimes to go to parties, at one of which he met Joyce. The story is that they had absolutely nothing to say to each other. Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jane Garrity, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Studies. Under normal circumstances, I would say a few words and then pass out the diplomas to our 2020 graduates. But now you are all far removed from one another, and this pandemic dictates that we remain at an uncomfortable distance. But as English scholars, we all know that knowledge of great literature cultivates the wisdom necessary to sustain our essential humanity during difficult times like this. The neurologist Oliver Sacks, in his 1985 classic, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, recounts the case of a patient with a memory disorder that rendered him unable to recognize not only others, but himself. To compensate for this amnesiac anomaly, the man unconsciously invented countless narratives about who he was and what sort of a life he had lived. Such a patient, Sacks writes of the inventive amnesiac man, must literally make himself and his world up at every moment. Sacks conveys that this is precisely what we are all doing, in a certain sense, as we continually make ourselves and our world up through the stories we tell ourselves and each other. Sacks's examination of the building blocks of that self-conception and how narrative becomes the pillar of our self-understanding is one way of proposing why we in English care so much about stories. It also reminds us of the advice that the poet Rilke gave to his beloved 19-year-old friend Franz in 1903 when Franz was an officer cadet in the military. Rilke wrote in a letter, quote, "You are so young, so before all beginning, and I want to beg you as much as I can, dear friend, to be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign language. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given to you, because you would not be able to live them. The point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." The thing that both Sachs and Rilke acknowledge is that asking questions and trying to formulate the answers, i.e., creating stories about our life experiences, cultivates the wisdom necessary to sustain our essential humanity. Recently, the journal Science found that people, after reading literary fiction, performed uniformly better on tests measuring empathy, social perception, and emotional intelligence, skills that come in especially handy when you're trying to interpret someone's body language or gauge what they might be thinking. And here's what I found. In addition, students who learn how to respond analytically to something as complex, nuanced, and contradictory as literature learn how to assess, to trace, to interpret, and to craft in ways that honor both argument and aesthetics, evidence as well as intuition. So, warm congratulations, English graduates, and please remember that wherever your careers may lie, much of your happiness will depend not only upon your interactions with those around you, but also upon your ability to remember that each of you are narratives in progress, constructed daily by the stories you tell about your life experience. As Rilke said to his dear friend, "All my good wishes are ready to accompany you, and my faith is with you." I am sending each of our 2020 English graduates my heartfelt congratulations and good wishes today. Thank you.